in Surah Ash-Shams, Surah number 91, ayat number 7 through 8, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Allah says, I swear by the soul and the proportion given to it, the physical shape and the form given to it, and inspired it with discernment of its wickedness and its righteousness. He has succeeded who has purified it. So Allah is taking an oath on the soul, nafs, right? And then the properties or the physical shape given to it. But then He turns around and He says, then He has inspired in that soul the discernment, ability to judge between its wickedness and its goodness. So what He's saying is that our soul itself has evil tendencies and it has good tendencies. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is, a couple days ago, you probably heard the incident of the shooting that happened in Atlanta, right, where a 14-year-old boy went ahead and assaulted some people and caused a lot of harm and grief to the community. Now, the problem lies is that when you look at it that way, you have the issues of the gun part itself, right, which needs to be looked at. But we also need to turn around and look at, what type of motivation or emotion or what caused this particular 14-year-old to go ahead and act out in this rage or whatever motive that he had behind. And how do we take this ayah of the Quran where Allah says that He has empowered the soul with the ability to judge between its control, its evil tendencies and its good tendencies. And you have to purify yourself around it, right? Many people face a lot of anxiety, face a lot of stress, face a lot of confusion in their life. And this is, they label it mental health issues nowadays, right? They call it mental health issues. The problem is that when you look at it in this absolute terms, right, that is actually not correct. Because human beings are not designed to be static creatures. We're not always operating on the same plane of emotion. We are always in this constant state of flux where our emotion and our mental aptitudes and states keeps fluctuating and changing. And we as human beings remain in this constant state of transition where 1 second you are doing things that will elevate you above the angels. And then another second, you are doing things where you are even lower than the animals and the beasts. The problem is that, when you use your intellect to control your emotions, you rise above the angels because angels have intellect, but they don't have emotions. So that what makes us better as human beings because Allah has, given us the ability to rise above the angels. When we use our emotions with the control of our intellect, we rise above the angels. On the other hand, if we let go of the intellect and let the emotions drive us, we become lower than the animals because the animals don't have the intellect or the akal, but they are purely driven by their emotions. So when we don't use our intellect, then we are even below the lowest of the lowest animals, right? And in this age, it becomes very difficult to figure out what exactly is going on. Then part of this is the fact that we need to be in a place where we need to figure out how to control our emotions. This journey, although when we think that, we need to figure out how to control our emotions, the moment you say you've arrived at a certain point where your emotions are under your control, that means that's the time you're actually going wrong. Because at any given age, right, you are always in this journey and you're always in this process, right? So if we assume that I've, reached heaven, I've reached the status where I'm going to be, guaranteed heaven because I've done everything I need to do, that's where things go wrong. So, and that is constant going, battle between us or a process. So at the end of the day, we are a process. We are not a static human being, right? And, this change from the highest of the high, the immense potential to go high and the potential to go lowest of the low, right? لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah says, we have created you as the best of the creations. Summa radadnahu asfala safilin. But then there are people who actually go to the lowest of the low. So we are in this state where we are always in this flux where we are going from the high end and we are going to the low end. And the science of being able to understand our emotions is actually called ethics, or in the today's buzzword term, one other buzzword is called emotional intelligence, right? The emotional intelligence is the ability to regulate or being able to control our emotions in a manner where we become productive about it. And when you look at today's young generation, one of the problems we have is that we have the current young generation goes through a lot of emotional changes anyways, and the previous generation was all designed around the part of doing the act until you firmly believed in the act. So for example, when I was growing up, all my parents said was, do this amal, do this action, and we never actually bothered to ask why. We just kept doing it until one day we finally got it without actually asking the question about it. On the other hand, you have today's generation, right, which if you tell them do something, the next question is why. So, and which is fine, right? But the problem is, as they are going through this journey, we have to give them those answers, right? But this journey is really hard, where you're going through these emotions. 1 second you're here, 1 second you are there, right? And you may find the young generation where one morning they are believing something else, and by the time it's evening time, they are 180-degree turn and they are believing into something else. So we have to look at this scenario where the young generation has to be given this ability or the tools to actually understand how to work with their emotions. And when the thing is with the young generation, once what I've seen, at least with my children, once you tell them why, and once it gets into their heart that they believe in the why, then the amal is actually not a problem from there on at all, right? So it's actually a reverse generation. We never asked why, they start with why first. And the problem with this is that the case I mentioned about this young boy, right? The issue when it comes is one of the issues is that in the social media world today, right, it's all about constant self-promotion, constant self-validation. It's about who's clicking me on my website, who's following me, right? And then the social media websites feed you these algorithms which actually are curtailing to your desire and what you like. So what you do is, in the end, creating this echo chamber which isolates you from everybody else, where you don't even challenge your own beliefs, right? And you don't let anybody outside person's view also get into your purview. So now you have completely shut off. So now, you on one hand, you have emotions like desire, right? And what you want to see. So you have this whole social media which is feeding you that. And then you turn around and you look down upon or cancel the people who are not like you or who don't believe in that type of scenario. So what it does is it creates this us versus them mentality, which ends up breeding anger and ends up, breeding jealousy, and ends up, eventually ends up towards violence, right? So we have to go through this journey of making sure we try to understand what the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt have to say about something like this, right? In the Quran, Allah says, the one who forgets Allah, Allah makes him forget himself. It's a very interesting point of view. So if you don't have Allah as the front and center of your emotions on how you are operating, if you don't have Allah as, the biggest part is called taqwa and piety, to have fear of Allah, right? To know Allah is omnipresent, where everything you're doing is by putting Allah in front of you. So the moment you forget about Allah, Allah makes you forget about yourself. Because the thing is, when we are created, Allah says, He breathed into us his spirit. So if you forget him, what are you really doing? You're forgetting your own self. Now, the hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam salawat. He says, whose intellect controls his emotions. Whose intellect controls his emotions, he is elevated above the angels. And he whose intellect is not governing his emotions, that person becomes lower than the beastly animal. And one of the biggest issue with that type of emotion is actually called anger. There are four things that actually, is part of Islamic ethics sciences, right? One is called the intellect, the aql. Second is anger, ghazab, right? Your desire. And then there is another term called creativity. Those are the four things that regulate. The intellect is supposed to be the CEO of your emotions. All these are different departments and faculties that are inside us as human beings when it comes down to emotion. And anger is such a worst tool that you can use, right? Imam Ali says, anger begins with madness and then it ends in remorse. So when I get angry, I see nothing but red. At that time, what am I doing? I'm brushing off all my intellect. I'm not worried about who's in front of me, what is going on. I'm going to hurl either harsh words or actions that are going to be detrimental or harmful to me, or I'm going to take it out on other people. Excessive anger actually is, there's a lot of religions which say, you shouldn't have, anger is completely despised. Desire should be zero. However, Islam doesn't say that there is extremes are the right way, right? He says middle is the right answer. So how do we explain this, right? When we get angry, what happens is that it blinds us to the truth. When I get angry, even if somebody puts a fact in front of me, I am not going to listen to it or pay attention to it. It's like, the hadith from Imam Sadiq is that salawat. He says, when you get angry, you become like a rabid dog, right? Who's foaming from his mouth, right? And then, he's destructive in his nature when he's in that rabid state. And same way where this human being is hurling actions, right, and words at other people that are destructive in nature. Uh, there is a story I actually want to tell you about it. Maybe it will help drive home the point without me trying to go explain this. So, the story is that there was a young man. I'll just call him Jabir, for example. Jabir used to have the problem of losing his anger, and he would get angry at his family, get angry at his parents, get angry at his friends. If somebody's walking down the street, he basically had a short fuse. So if somebody saw him, they would just avoid him, because the moment you even say something to him, he's going to lose his anger. Now in the town, there was a wise man that people used to love and respect. Now, Jabir knew about this wise man, right? One day what happened is that the Jabir lost his anger with his friend. And he thought to himself, like, I do have this problem where I'm constantly losing my anger. Let me go and ask the wise man for some advice and see what he can tell me about it. So he went to the wise man. So the wise man said, go get some nails, a lot of nails, take a hammer. And every time you get angry on somebody, right, you have this fence outside your house, right, go and, hammer a nail every time you get angry. So that's it. Yep, that's it. That's all I have to do. That's all you have to do. So, first day, Jabir, probably got angry 30, 40 times. He had to go nail a hole in the fence 30, 40 times. He probably did that for about a month or so. Then he started realizing this nail business is pretty painful. So maybe I should dial down my anger a little bit, right? So he started kind of, taking a deep breath and controlling his anger, right? And trying to dial it back down every time until he got it to the point where he was not nailing any holes. So he kind of got his anger under his control. So he went back to the wise man again. He says, I haven't been nailing any holes in the fence. He says, okay. So he said, what now? He says, why don't you do this? The next time you get angry and you control your anger, right? Take a nail out. He said, that's all. He said, that's all you have to do. Just take a nail out. Whenever you get angry, you control your anger, pull a nail out of the fence. So he started doing that, right? Every time he got angry, he didn't react on it, pulled the nail out. And he started pulling the nails out of the fence until one day there was no nails on the fence at all. So now he went to the wise man. He says, all the nails are now out of my fence. So the wise man says, let me go with you to where you were nailing the nails in the fence. Let me see what exactly was going on. So he says, okay, come, we go together. They went together. And then, the wise man and Jabir stood next to each other. And then the wise man pointed him out the fence. He said, look at this fence. He says, it's riddled with holes. Right? The fence is completely riddled with holes. He says, even though you got to a point where now you are controlling your anger, right, and you're making it up to people, right? The problem is that whenever you lost your anger and you took it out on somebody, you drove a nail into their heart and drove a nail into their psyche. And whatever damage or repair you did, it actually always remains there. And that's the problem with anger, right? A lot of times what happens is we reserve our best emotions and akhlaq and ethics and behavior for the outside people. MashaAllah, this person is very good, serves in the community, does the cleaning, comes to the prayer, has a nice beard, abaya is perfect, right? Nothing's going wrong, sweetest person you can ever talk to. And you go home and this person is like pretty aggressive to the family, gets angry with the family left and right. There's a simple story that somebody died some time back. So somebody asked this person, like, who died, right? So he says, fala, right? This person died. He used to serve in the community and he did this and he did that. And then he says, oh, I remember the guy who always used to get angry. Now, 65 years of your life, somebody summarized it in one sentence, and all they had to say about you was that this person used to lose his anger. What did you think you earned? So anger, in that essence, excessive anger, is very much destructive in nature. The second part of this equation is that when you look at anger, not having anger is actually a very bad thing too. Because what happens is when you don't lose your anger at all, right, what happens? It breeds timidness, it breeds cowardice, right? You become a coward. Somebody comes to rob your home, right, and you are outside the car, you're watching this person rob your home, you say, you know what, go ahead. Get done with robbing the house, right? After you're done robbing, I will enter the home. That's a person who's not getting angry, right, at the emotion that is going on. So there's children in the house, right? A lot of times, what happens is we have this culture, let the elders speak, children shouldn't speak. Whenever they try to speak something, or even if it's the youngest child in the house, or if it's the youngest brother or sister, you don't have an opinion, don't speak. What happens is eventually they get suppressed. When you have a family member and somebody's wanting to speak, you got to give them the voice, because the problem is what happens is when they grow up and they have all this pent-up emotion when nobody's heard you, you do what? You take it out on other people, or you become a complete coward on the other hand. In my house, for example, right, if there is a loud sound in the basement, and I take the bat that my wife keeps, right behind the door, which now everybody knows, So the bat, I give her the bat and say, honey, go downstairs, right? And check everything out. And when everything is clear, right, then call me, I'll come. So Islam has anger, right? There's two dimensions. One is the animalistic dimension, right? The good part where we have to fend for ourselves, we have to defend ourselves, right? If everybody ran over you, then they would pretty much be abusing you completely. On the other hand, if you become excessively angry, you are like the person who's constantly driving nails in the fence of everybody around. The right answer is actually somewhere in between, a balanced approach, where you're using your intellect and then you are guiding or using your intellect to guide your emotions in the right manner. I'll give you a story. Salawat. Hopefully we can be done with this. On the Battle of Khandak, there was a man known as equal to 1,000 warriors. His name was Amr ibn Abdul. Amr ibn Abdul jumped the fence and he challenged the Muslims to fight. Nobody came until Imam Ali came to fight him. Now on the fight, Imam Ali got him on the ground. And Imam Ali was about to strike him. And all of a sudden, this man spit on Imam Ali's face. Now Imam Ali, when this man spit on his face, Imam Ali, instead of striking him, got up and walked away. So what happened? There's a meeting going on. Anger department collected all his cronies and said, hey, we have an urgent meeting. What's going on? Well, this person spit on our face. What is going on? Well, why did he do that? Because we were about to kill him, right? And what happened? Let's file a report with the CEO. The report went to the Akal, which is the CEO, right? The CEO started asking the questions like, why were we trying to kill this man? We're trying to kill this man for the sake of Allah, but why are we trying to kill him right now? Because he got us angry. Imam Ali, while the CEO is processing this, anger is working in the background. The Akal or the CEO is reacting to the report that is coming from this Akal. And the Akal is finally processed, where Imam Ali walked away a few steps, gathered himself back, and then he came back and finished off the enemy. Somebody asked Imam Ali alayhi salam, right, why did you walk away? So he said, I walked away because when that man spit on my face, I got angry. So if I had killed him at that time, I would have killed him out of my own anger. However, when I gathered myself and came back, I said to myself, the only reason I kill him is for the sake of Allah, fi sabilillah. So that's when I killed him. And that's an example of the Ahlul Bayt. When you run into anger, you self-reflect, you gather your emotions, and once you have gathered your emotions, you figure out the reaction between what your reaction harm is going to cause on your psyche and yourself, and what damage it is going to cause to the person opposite to you and around. And once you have figured that out, then figure out the consequences of this. Consequence of killing somebody, somebody's life is ended. Consequence of killing somebody, their family is affected forever. Consequence of killing somebody, all the psyche of the entire neighborhood or the community or the nation's impacted. And those are the things that we need to figure out how we can control our anger, right? And our emotion using intellect. On the other hand, we also need to recognize that as humans, we need to have empathy towards other people. Don't go poking the bear, provoking the bear. That's why I was saying, your best akhlaq is for the outside people. Whereas the Quran says that the believer actually, including Rasulullah, is gentle with the believers and is harsh on the unbelievers. So when we take out our anger on our own family members, right, like I was saying, our akhlaq is best on the outside and it's hard on the people inside our home. It actually should be reversed. We should be reserving our best akhlaq and our best behavior for people inside our family, right? And that's what helps us, get our emotions under control. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Inna Allaha malaikatahu yusalluna 'alan nabiy ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. There's only 2 or 3 things I want to end this speech with. The first and foremost is self-recognition of your emotion, whether it's your desire, whether it's your anger, whether it's your jealousy. The first step starts with recognizing your emotion. You have to put an effort into try to recognize what are the triggers, what are the things that actually get you going in those emotions. Two is about learning how to use your intellect to control your emotion. Understand where you are, why you are there, what you are doing, and how you can be beneficial or how you can be harmful in that situation. And number three is learn to generate what I call emotional intelligence, but having empathy for others. Empathy also on yourself and also on other people. So may I, and the best example for the people who demonstrated emotional intelligence were the martyrs of Karbala, and not only that, the people actually who endured the incident of Karbala. And inshallah, one of these days, as I continue on this topic, I'll be able to highlight some of the things around their emotional intelligence and what lessons we can learn from it as far as controlling our emotions. You know, you think about this, your father, not father, your brother, your son, your nephews, you know, all of those are killed in front of you. You are chained and you walked down the bazaars of Sham. Yet you have the emotional presence to deliver the speech which Bibi Zainab alayhi salam delivered in the court of Yazid. You need emotional intelligence to do that. You need courage to do that. And those are some of the attributes that we need to figure out how we can learn from ourselves.